If you have seen our video How to Organize Anything, you know by now that designing an organization amounts to answering 5 questions. What needs to be done? Who does what? Who talks to whom? Who gets what? And how do disputes and problems get resolved? Let's focus for a bit on the 5th question, which is about exception management. How do disputes and problems get resolved? You may have noticed that this question is special and a bit unlike the other 4. That's because it is about how the answers to the other 4 questions can be modified or changed. So let's dig deeper into this. For an organization designer, there is a range of answers to the question of how to manage exceptions. At one extreme, a single powerful individual, the boss, may be given the right to decide how exceptions are to be resolved, and everybody must obey them. Such a solution in which the right to direct is in the hands of one person, the boss, is sometimes labeled as centralized, authoritative, and hierarchical. At the other extreme, the right to decide how exceptions should be resolved could be delegated to all members of the group. Everybody has an equal say in deciding. This solution is often labeled as decentralized, empowered, or self-managed. In between these extremes are situations where everybody can suggest solutions, but one person, the boss, finally decides. This is a consultative approach. Another point in between the extremes is a situation where the boss only steps in to decide if the group cannot reach agreement on their own. This is called a facilitative approach. So which is better? To direct or to delegate? While words associated with delegation such as empower, self-manage, and even decentralize have a positive halo, this does not make it automatically better to delegate in all situations. On the one hand, delegation gives more autonomy, and some people are motivated and engaged by autonomy. It also leverages all group members' knowledge, not just the boss's. It can save time that might be spent in waiting for the boss to decide, particularly in larger multi-layered organizations. It may also serve to train group members to become better at solving the basic problems of organization design. On the other hand, the delegation approach to exception management opens up the risk that the group fails to reach agreement in a timely manner. This is particularly a challenge in larger and more diverse groups dealing with more complex issues. Delegation also opens up the question of accountability. When a boss directs how to resolve exceptions, the boss is also the one ultimately accountable. But if these decisions are delegated to the subordinates and we hold them accountable, it may force them to take on risks they are not able or willing to. It may also be harder to hold subordinates accountable as a group. As they say, when everybody is responsible, nobody may be responsible. To sum up, here are some pointers on how to choose between different models of exception handling. For small groups, fairly homogeneous groups, and groups whose members work more or less independently using modular work processes, delegation is likely to be effective for exception management. But in large groups, groups whose membership is quite heterogeneous, and when group members are interdependent with each other in complex and possibly contentious ways, then direction may be more effective. Of course, you don't have to settle for the extremes. Models of consultation and facilitation attempt to balance the benefits and costs of delegation. So if you are organizing a group of friends to plan and host a party, it's probably a small group, doing fairly independent tasks, composed of people who know and understand each other well. You can afford to go for a high delegation approach in this case. However, if you are putting together a large team of specialists who are strangers to each other, for instance working on developing a new product or service, then you will need to take a more directive approach. So far we have been talking about just one of the 5 basic questions of organization design, whether to do exception management through direction or delegation. But remember, this question is special. That's because it is about how the answers to the other 4 questions can be modified or changed when exceptions arise. But we can also ask how the initial answers to each of those 4 questions arise. For instance, the decision on how to do task division and task allocation could be taken by a boss who directs, or be delegated to the group. who talks to whom and who gets what could be decided by a boss, or left to the group to agree on. So an organization design is the set of solutions to the 5 basic questions, the what of organization design. The process of coming up with a design based on direction or delegation is the how of organization design. Some organizations rely on direction and authority to come up with answers to all 5 questions. Some non-hierarchical organizations do exactly the opposite, relying on delegation and self-management to answer all the questions. Others mix and match, for instance by allowing task allocation to be done through delegation and letting people pick tasks for themselves, but task division is done through direction by a boss. You are now ready to think about how you could improve the organizations you are familiar with by asking which of the 5 basic questions should be answered through direction and which through delegation.